This is the Faith Talks pod. It's snowing on this beautiful Saturday, and I am right in the middle of the book of Genesis, chapter 28. We'll be talking about Matthew chapter 9. Let's break it down today. In Genesis chapter 28, Jacob wakes up from his dream, absolutely shaken. He doesn't say, "Wow, that was interesting," but he says, "Surely the Lord is in this place, and I didn't even know it." You know, that line alone preaches. Jacob realizes that God was not only at altars or tents or family traditions, but God met him on the run in a lonely place with nothing but a stone for a pillow. I think every one of us could testify of moments like that. Jacob calls this place the house of God and the gate of heaven. In the ancient world, this language mattered. In Akkadian mythology, people believed the gods lived in the heavens and the messengers traveled up and down stairways that connected heaven to earth. Temples were seen as the spot where the divine world touched the human world. So when Jacob sees angels ascending and descending, he's realizing something radical. God himself has chosen this ordinary patch of ground as a meeting place with him. Then Jacob sets up a stone pillar and pours oil on top of it. This was not strange in the ancient Near East, as we see that standing stones were often used as sacred markers and memorials, and pouring oil was a way of dedicating something to a particular deity. Jacob is not inventing a new religion here. He's just responding to a real encounter. What do I gain from this story? I gain that Jacob does not build a temple, that he marks a moment. He learns that God is not confined to holy buildings, but he creates holy moments wherever he chooses to reveal himself. And sometimes the place you least expect becomes the place that you actually never forget. And after encountering God at Bethel, Jacob does not just walk away inspired, he actually responds with a vow. And in the ancient world, vows were not casual promises or emotional statements. A vow was a serious, conditional commitment made directly to a particular deity. It usually followed a request. In other words, when someone needed provision or protection, they would make a vow that said, "If you do this, I will do that." And that's exactly what Jacob does. He says, if God will be with me, if God will protect me on this journey, give me food to eat, clothes to wear, bring me back safely. See, these aren't extravagant requests. They're just basic survival needs. Jacob, you have to understand, is a man on the run. He has no land, no security, no safety net. His vow reflects his vulnerability. And notice what Jacob offers in return. He offers a tithe. In the ancient world, fulfilling a vow was public and usually involved bringing a gift to a sanctuary, often a sacrifice or a portion of one's income. Jacob promises a tenth or tithe of what God gives him. This isn't bargaining, it's acknowledgement. He's saying, if my life is sustained by God, then my increase also belongs to God. Jacob's faith is still developing here. His vow sounds conditional, even cautious, but God doesn't reject it. God meets Jacob where he is, not where he should be. And sometimes you and I have faith that starts not with bold declarations, but with honest dependence on God. In Matthew chapter 9, we see an account of someone being raised from the dead. Raising the dead in the Old Testament was not common. It was rather extraordinary. Only Elijah and Elisha ever did it, and even then it required intense prayer and direct divine intervention. So when Matthew introduces a man asking Jesus to raise his daughter, this is not a small request. This is a desperate, faith-filled plea that puts Jesus in the category of God's greatest prophets or even more. This man is a ruler of the synagogue. That matters. He's not on the margins. He's respected. He's influential. He's religiously clean. And yet he falls at the feet of Jesus. That posture is reserved only for kings or for God himself. In one act, this man lays down his reputation, his status, and his dignity because grief has a way of stripping us down to what really matters. Faith often begins when pride finally runs out. But then Matthew does something brilliant. On the way to the ruler's dying daughter, Jesus is interrupted by a woman who has been bleeding for nearly 12 years. Under the law, she is perpetually unclean, socially isolated, religiously excluded, and likely all alone. She could not even be in the crowd. Every step she takes risks contaminating other people, and yet she reaches out, taking that risk, and touches the fringe of Jesus' garment. Here's the tension. According to the law, her touch should have made him unclean. But instead, holiness flows the other direction. Jesus is not contaminated by her brokenness, but rather she is healed by his wholeness. One is powerful, the other is powerless. One is named, the other anonymous. One kneels publicly, the other reaches secretly, and Jesus stops for both of them. That's the kingdom on display. And as Jesus moves from one town to another, two blind men begin following him, crying out, "Have mercy on us, Son of David." That title alone tells us something powerful. Son of David was a messianic title, but most Jews expected the Messiah to be a political liberator or military king, not a healer. Yet these blind men connect Jesus' identity to mercy and restoration. They understand something deeper, that the God who rules over sight and blindness is at work in him. In the Old Testament, God alone controls sight. He can blind armies, restore vision through prophets. Elijah and Elisha healed, but exorcisms were rare. David is the only figure associated with driving away an evil spirit. So when Jesus heals the blind and casts out demons, the crowds are stunned. Matthew even says nothing like this has ever been seen in Israel. This wasn't just power, it was unprecedented authority. But not everyone celebrates. The Pharisees dismiss it, accusing Jesus of working through demonic power. Their response reveals their blindness. They can see the miracle, but they can't see the Messiah. And then Matthew zooms out a little bit. Jesus keeps teaching, healing, proclaiming the kingdom. And when he looks at the crowd, he feels compassion. They're described as sheep without a shepherd. And that Pharisee echoes Israel's darkest moments when leaders failed and God himself promised to step in as that shepherd. Jesus is fulfilling that role, feeding, healing, and seeking the lost. And finally, Jesus says that the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Harvest imagery carried urgency. Miss the window and the crop is lost. His point is clear. The need is massive. The time is short, and God's people must step into the work. The miracle stories lead here. What Jesus does in chapter 8 and 9, his disciples are about to be sent to do in chapter 10. Compassion isn't meant to stop with Jesus. It's meant to multiply through his followers. Make sure to follow Faith Talks Pod on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, TikTok, Instagram, and all the things. We want to make sure that you're catching the latest episode every morning at 5 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're still continuing our Bible reading plan. God bless and have a great